Welcome to That's a Tap. On our weekly episode, we're going to be talking about everything going on recently in the combat sports, MMA, and boxing world. I'm CT, joined with my man DJ. How we feeling?
We're feeling good. We're feeling real good. Um, an unusually popular bare knuckle fight over the weekend. A lot of drama
Mm,
there. But I'm excited for this episode, man. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about boxing. We're going to talk about MMA. It's going to be a mixed bag. And, there's a
mm.
lot going on everywhere, which is, really good for us, combat sport fans. So, really looking forward to the next 30 minutes or so, CT,
Yep.
chatting with you.
Likewise, cannot wait. And yeah, this is going to be our regular for our subscribers, viewers. We plan to hit on the news and the buzz throughout the week, and we'll hit it all on one show weekly. And there's so much happening. You mentioned it was a big weekend. The bare knuckle fighting championship was, floated under the radar, but one particular scenes took the spotlight. It was a not as strong UFC card. What did you hear?
Yeah.
What did you make of the bare knuckle
Hey,
with Luke Rockhold, Perry?
hey, let me tell you this, right? If you told me a couple of months ago, hey, Jude, listen, guess what? You're going to be more hyped for a bare knuckle card or a UFC fight card, be it even if it's a Fight Night Apex card, I would have just laughed in your face. But man, it was a real leading up to the whole thing, there was a lot of excitement. I mean, obviously, Mike Perry's an interesting character, and you always get entertainment whenever he's around. So, like, I always tune in to watch Mike Perry, man. Like, he's entertainment
Mm,
guaranteed. And then you got Luke Rockhold, it was very unusual. We saw Luke Rockhold retire in the UFC, then come back and announce his bare knuckle debut. And then he's going against Mike Perry, like, all these crazy things going on, and then the core main really caught my attention, which was two really great fighters in Eddie Alvarez and Chad Mendes, right? Both notorious for losing to the notorious one, who also happened to be in
yeah.
the arena, right? So, hey, look, um, it was a great card. There was a lot of entertainment. I actually, to be honest, I was tuned into that over the other events that were unfolding yesterday. So, to be honest, because it had my attention, especially the core main and the main. And man, like the core main absolutely delivered, and so did the main event, right? There was a lot of entertainment. Look, I don't know. I don't want to. I don't want to say that. Look, I'm a fan of the style of fighting, which is bare knuckle. I feel like the time and age that we're in, we're talking about fighter protection and looking after the fighter. So not fighting with gloves, it kind of is, taking it back to the the cave days. But having said that, it is entertainment guaranteed. But hey, let me tell you this, man. Point blank, it's way better than slap fighting. You get one dude slapping another dude who's completely unarmed with his hands behind his back. Hey, this is way better than that. Like I'll give you that. But
Yeah.
look, I guess like the reason you can't put like boxing gloves on is then it eventually ultimately becomes boxing, right? But I'm thinking, hey, could you do like MMA gloves, but just boxing only, just some form of leather in your fist, so we saw Luke Rockhold's face after the event, and man, it was just gnarly. And if you looked at Eddie Alvarez and Chad Mendes as well, they were like quite banged up. Well, the Chad Mendes Eddie Alvarez was a split decision win for Eddie. Rightfully so, man. Both guys fought their hearts out, and I feel like the right person won. It was very gruesome to watch. I mean, like to see those shots
Yeah.
land, some of the loud noises, and then obviously Mike Perry was an absolute savage, man. He's actually a different fighter in bare knuckle. He's clearly, he's got this it factor. He's a star, right? And
Mm,
then he's also now backing it up with his fights, right? He's beating people. Let's not forget Mike Perry fought Michael Venom Page, MVP from the Bellator organization, right? He's another very popular fighter, hailing from England. And man,
mm,
like he beat him, he beat him as well. So Mike Perry's built a massive fan base in that bare knuckle um, industry. And I think, look, him beating Luke Rockhold now further cements and solidifies it. It was just sort of one-way traffic, to be honest. Like Mike Perry was just relentless. He just kept going, right? And he didn't seem like he took too much damage back either. I mean, for Luke Rockhold, I just feel like, man, like he's had such a great storied career. I feel like he can wrap it up now, not without further tarnishing
Yeah.
anything. That Paulo Costa fight was a great send off, like a great point to retire because while he lost that fight, he didn't lose any stock. It was a good fight. He gave a good fight. He had Paulo Costa in trouble. There were some interesting moments. Should have just left it at that. But hey, guess look, when you're a fighter, I guess it's that thing. They say you got the itch. You can't let it go. So yeah, that's what it was. But hey, the ultimate headline, right? Guess what the ultimate headline of this whole event was? The bare knuckle event. What do you think, CD? What do you think? Who do you think made the headlines there?
The man on screen, the notorious one.
Oh,
But I want to throw it to you with this sort of staged PR event, or I don't know what it was. Has this now made you want to watch more? Was this successful? Has this made you, as a viewer, want to watch more KFC?
BKFC. Take the B out and KFC. I'm always ready for some KFC wicked wings. But look, yeah, but it'll come down to the matchups, right? Like, I mean, I'm
Mm,
sure like there's a boxing event quite often as well, but like we're more intrigued with the good matchups, and this is what happened here. It's sort of like the stars aligned. There was a not so great
yeah,
UFC card, mainly because of like the main event falling off and all those kind of things. And then we had like some great fighters, at least the top four, delivering some big names in this BKFC card. And and then the fights actually delivering. To be honest, like depending on the fight, and before my stance was, look, it's not for me. Like look, I love combat sports, I love MMA, I love boxing, I love to see beautiful violence inside the octagon or the ring, but you know, with it shouldn't come at the cost of the safety of the fighter, which was always that question
yeah,
mark for me in bare knuckle, right?
yeah,
But look, we still see like there are medical practitioners around and like looking after the safety of the fighters. But if there are great matchups like what we saw yesterday, I'm more than happy to tune in. Like to be honest, I tuned in yesterday, and I was able to catch the fights, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. To be honest, I was even for the Eddie Chad fight. I was actually on my feet trying to like
yeah,
just follow the fight. It was crazy, man. Like I think yes, to answer your question, yes, I would tune in if the matchup is good, right?
yeah. Great. Yeah. Look, me personally, with that also, I agree. But I think there's space for everything. I think, if there continues to be people who leave the UFC, maybe at the latter stage of their career, or fighters that have lost a few in a row, I think it's good for these other organizations to be able to take on big names and, get success also, give those fighters a bigger platform. So I think,
Yep.
yeah, UFC, BKFC, One Championship, Bellator,
Yep.
everything else I'm missing out. I think there's a
PFL.
yeah, PFL, there's a market for everything. I think,
Yep.
DJ, what do you think?
Not slap fighting though. I mean, I don't know. I'm still not sold on slap fighting, man. Like, I find it hard to get into it. Hey,
Yeah,
look, I thought the same about bare knuckle, but like, it's still like you still can intelligently defend yourself in bare knuckle. I just don't think you cannot intelligently
slap.
defend
Yep.
yourself in eating a
Yeah.
slap, man. Like, you just stand and take a slap straight to your face, flush.
It's
Um,
more a reality show entertainment. I don't really associate it more as combat fighting. I think it's more
yeah,
just reality, shock factor.
yeah, just entertainment, I guess. Yeah, yeah. Look, man, BKFC is growing on me. I'm gonna be honest, like especially after
Mm,
last night or yesterday's card. I'm definitely
yep.
keen. And hey, guess what? Mike Perry fights. I'm gonna watch, but I really hope it's not Conor McGregor, man. This just makes zero sense. Like, what's going
Nah.
on, right? We're talking about Conor McGregor coming back, the Ultimate Fighter about to air. There's a lot of contractual, elements to it. So I don't. I just think it was just like a marketing stunt is what I feel. He happened to be
Mm,
there, and like obviously we saw he
yep.
was generously indulging himself in proper 12, right?
Proper
Like so
12.
obviously, and
Yep.
he's a man, he's a showman. He loves the limelight, right? And Mike Perry called him in, and he obliged, and they had a bit of a face off. Don't know what was going on there, but man, like we're waiting for Conor McGregor to come back and fight in the UFC. Fight an actual contender and make a run for that title, right? At this stage, we're still unclear as to where that's headed. Right? We're not sure if he's entered the SADA pool yet. We're not sure if a bout has been signed. Seems like what's his name, Mike Chandler's like training and grinding really hard, trying to
Mm,
be fight ready. McGregor seems to be sort of enjoying life a little bit, which gives me the indication that maybe the fight date hasn't been locked in yet. The more time passes, right, we're in May now. I feel like maybe we might not see him come back this year, right?
yep, I agree.
Unless he's in the pool already, and we don't know, and he's being tested, and the testing's going on. They're just keeping it under wraps, and then whenever it's ready, probably at the end of the Ultimate Fighter finale, they'll just be like, "Hey, here's
Mm.
what's going to happen. They're gonna fight on this date."
That is, yeah, the big factor. I think once it starts airing, they're going to be in the news a lot more. But
Yep,
also, speaking of being in the news, the UFC card on the weekend. Well, what did you make? Did you catch that? Obviously, it was going to be a different event, the
yep,
Renato Moicano fight, but
yep.
ended up being not so. But what did you
Yeah,
think of the UFC card that was going up against the bare knuckle?
yeah, look, I was originally very interested in the Moicano Sarukian fight because
Mm,
Armin Sarukian is an extremely talented fighter, extremely well rounded. So, like, I think
indeed.
he's one of those guys who can be considered as a future of that division. And then we saw sort of like a re-emergence of Renato Moicano last time when they were at the
Mm,
MSG, right, Madison Square Garden. He had that iconic post-fight moment, and with Joe
yep.
Rogan. So I was kind of looking like it looks reinvigorated, revamped. He wants to prove a point. It's going to be an exciting fight, but wasn't to be because he got obviously Meccano got injured and they had to reschedule the fight, I believe. Which in the end we ended up with Song Yadong versus Ricky Simon for the main event. Now Song Yadong is an elite bantamweight. Again, another fighter that excites me. I love watching him. Comes to fight, game opponent, and he delivered. Right, like the fight was great. It was a round five TKO, and he got the win. He was dominating the entire fight.
Mm,
It's quite slick, fast, and crisp striking as you expect from Song.
yep.
Yeah, man. Like, I mean, to be fairly honest, I got glimpses of highlights from the other fights, but I was only able to because of the BKFC event. I only caught the main event. I rewatched the main event, and then yeah, like it was entertaining. It was a good fight. Um, Song again proves himself as like a top contender for that division. I think he called out
Mm,
Marlon Chito Vera. They obviously had a fight last time while Song
nice.
has the W next to him against him. It was a very controversial fight where everyone believed that Marlon Vera won that fight. So he wants to rematch that and clear all doubt, which I'm all for, man. Like it's great, and I think if he does win, it gives another new contender in that division. Or they could go the usual route, give him to Peter Yan. It seems like everyone fights Peter Yan and goes into the top five. It's a
Yep.
bit it's very interesting how the landscape changes at one point. Before that illegal knee, Peter Yan was considered it was a feared opponent. Was taught to be someone who was going to hold that belt for a very long time, but wasn't the case.
Momentum, yeah, is crazy
Momentum, man. It's
in the
crazy,
sport.
man.
But yeah, we look past and we will preview the upcoming pay-per-view. But yeah, the UFC Fight Night card, it obviously wasn't a strong one.
Hmm.
The headlines went to the bare knuckle on the
Yeah,
weekend.
absolutely.
Um,
Hey, there
but yeah,
was CT. Did you catch this news? I mean, look, I do not know if this is confirmed. I saw some news floating on the internet. I mean, there's everything floating on the internet these days. But so PFL is looking at acquiring Bellator. Not immediately, but I think there is a timeline that had been revealed. But if that were to happen, man, that's huge in MMA, right? Like,
mhm,
so we've had the UFC sort of have this stronghold against all the rest of the organizations, because the quality of fighters they had, and also the size of the organization and the resources and the backing they had. Now Bellator is quite big. You know, you could consider Bellator like a leaner version of the UFC, whereas PFL, they had their niche market. They knew what they were after. They had their own setup, their own tournament style, the $1 million fights, etc. And they catered to that, and they had focused on that. But we saw, as of recently, a lot of things were happening where Jake Paul jumped on the PFL bandwagon. You know, there were a lot of, multiple various events taking place under the PFL banner. If that were true, man, it's a huge move, and I'm quite excited. I'm quite excited because obviously competition makes all competitors strong, right? Like I think having a
Yep.
strong rival, with UFC would start to see a lot more, out of that. Maybe more equality in fighter pay as well. There'll be more pressure coming out if you have like a strong contender, because at the moment what the fighters are seeing is there's not so much options out there where they can go and get the stage that they have with the UFC.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that, and I did catch it. I'm glad you mentioned because I'm all for that. Again, I said before, more options. Um, free agency is going to be big. Did the UFC seem to DJ recently like they really want to condense their talent pool to have what they believe is the best, most active fighters, and there's always going to be fighters that get cut, and
Hmm.
they're going to need another home, and
Yeah.
they're going to need other opportunities, maybe to bounce back and get repair their name and get back into the UFC again. And I'm all for that. What do you really think about it?
No, I think it's really great. I think from a fighter's perspective, it's really great. The more options out there for the guys,
Mm,
the better for them, right? Like at the moment, how many? We don't know this. I'm just putting a theory out there. How many fighters do we reckon are like just
mm,
signing back up and keep re-signing because they're too nervous to go test out the market, because they're not sure, like they don't see an organization as strong as the UFC and the strength or and the resources that they possess, right? Like I
mm.
mean, now that if they can see, well, there is another equal uh, organization out there, they'll be more inclined to, or they could be more vocal about it. They could stand up for what they want a little bit more, without being fear of being cut from a premium organization. Without a doubt, man. Look, let's not get this wrong. But the UFC has done enough and more to be established as the most premium mixed martial arts organization on the planet right now, right? And I don't think that's going to change regardless of what happens, right? What we'll
Yep.
see is obviously that quality of, we see a lot of, if fighters don't sort of you know, l- listen to the UFC or don't go according to their will, we see sort of them getting cut or being iced. We'll see a lot less of that happening because there is now availability for another organization to come and pick them up, right? Like Bellator already has a big name, PFL already has a big name. Obviously, not as big as the UFC or the popularity that the UFC possesses, but combine them together, like add, man, like I know a lot of this talk and chatter about Jake Paul and sort of this, but he generates a lot of excitement, right? When he is involved and there's involvement, when Jake Paul's involved, people tend to want to see what's going on. Whether it's for controversial reasons or for the right reasons, they want to see what's involved. That brings a lot more popularity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think of this, right? You PFL and Bellator combine into a big organization, and at the top of that, you got Jake Paul, going out on media tours and sort of doing his antics. You can guarantee it. You're gonna get like a massive fan base there. Look what BKFC was able to achieve with putting the right fight and the fights delivering. So I
Yeah.
think it'll be a good move. If it were to happen, I'll be very excited for that. I think it'll make the UFC better too. Like I think UFC is quite good at the moment. It'll just generally going to make it even better.
Yep. Definitely. That's great. And now let's turn our attention to the boxing world because that's always buzzing, but it's going up to another level. What do you think?
Yeah,
We've got some Canelo Ryder uh,
yeah, man. I
news.
mean, that's the big one, right? When's that? Let me have a look. When's that? Like Canelo, right? Is that
Mm.
it's on that Cinco de Mayo weekend, right?
Yeah. So
And
that's this
um,
month, I believe, May.
yeah, it is on the 6th. Oh wow, it's this weekend, man.
Mm.
It's this weekend, so it's on the 6th of May. So it's on the same weekend as the Henry Cejudo fight. So that's going to be great. The Ryder, he's got 32. So Ryder's record is 32 wins and 5 losses, right?
Mm.
He's fighting out of England, London, England.
Yep.
And then we obviously got the Mexican, the world renowned, the superstar,
Yep.
Canelo Alvarez and he's fighting. Obviously, he's got a 58-2 record. That's insane, right? The two losses were to Floyd Mayweather and Bivol, who is chasing, right? Canelo
Yep.
said it, made it clear. I want Bivol, same weight class, same everything. I'm gonna beat him, right? Um, so yeah, man, like that's gonna be an exciting fight. It's on the zone, but man, Cinco de Mayo weekend, Mexican superstar, right? And the caliber of fighter he is,
Bring it on.
fighting fighting in Mexico, man. Phew, let's go, man.
Yep.
Like I mean, I feel for Ryder, and I mean when he walks out, the crowd's gonna be
Is
very
it
hostile,
is it
man.
going to be close, or do you think Canelo
I think
easy?
Canelo takes it. I mean, a fight's never easy, but I'll give the edge to Canelo. I think I'll give
Yep.
Canelo's not man like there are some people who crumble under pressure and some people just rise to the occasion, and I think Canelo's the latter, and he's going to just come in and do work. I think he's going to do work,
Yep.
and he's going to get it
He's
done. I
good.
think there's no way he's going to lose in front of his own crowd, man. Like not on Cinco de Mayo
No,
weekend. Nah,
don't
not
see it.
Canelo, no. No.
And what this hopefully then sets up is the next super fight
Yeah,
after
I
the
know. Look,
yep, another
well,
Canelo
Canelo.
in.
Yeah, well, Canelo wants Bivol, right? Me and you
Yeah,
have discussed this on air and off air. We want
we
a
need it.
different Canelo fight, right? But they're both good. Like if Bivol is what we're getting after this, I'm all for it, right? I mean, the guy's willing to challenge, right? The person who beat him, right, to a decision and go and like try and get that win, and he's quite confident he's able to do it, and you got to respect that. And as a champion, well, that's why Canelo is a champion through and through, right? And he's done things in boxing that no other people have like been able to. But only a selected few, right? And
Yep.
that's why he belongs to that elite group of boxers that we call legends, right? He's
Yeah,
definitely a future Hall of Famer, without a doubt. And he's still got time, man. He's very young. He's 32. Canelo's got a
he
lot more
is.
time,
No.
right? Canelo's going to rack up some records, right? When he steps away from the game of boxing, Canelo is going to be heralded as one of the greatest boxers to ever do it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So let me ask you now, what are three fights that you would love to see DJ
oh,
himself,
in
you know,
boxing, is it? In
matchmaking,
boxing, is it?
boxing? Yep.
All right, man. Eyes closed, straight up. So you're talking about fights that have not been made yet, right?
Correct.
Potential fights that we'd like to see. Yeah,
Yep.
Fury Usyk, without a doubt, that'll be my top number
Wow.
one fight that I want to see is Fury Usyk. We are in that unique spot where we can unify the belts. Let's do it.
Yep.
That is legendary. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Let's do it, right? Then I like to see the Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. fight, right? That's
Yep.
another fight that's been teased for so long, right? Yeah. The third fight, like there's a lot more fights that I like to see, but this is third. I'm using I'm going with big names here. Canelo, right? I know there's talks for Canelo and Bivol, and Canelo's been vocal about I want Bivol, but man, I want to see Canelo versus Benavidez,
Yep.
right? I want to see the all-out Mexican war. Benavidez is no joke, man. He's called the Mexican monster for a reason, right? And Canelo, we all know, pound for pound, great. Let's see that matchup. You know what I mean? I'd even be open to seeing that before we see Bivol, right? So that's another that's gonna be that's a mouth-watering fight. Even talking about it is making me excited. So yeah, I'd like to see that. What about you, CT? What's your top three? See if we align here.
Nice. Well, actually, yeah, I definitely agree with your Benavidez, Canelo.
Yeah,
That's there. Another one I want to throw at you is Tank Davis, Javonta Davis versus a uh, a Haney,
yeah,
Devin Haney. So that's one I
yeah.
really want to see. And of course, it's lost its sting, but I still really want to see a Deontay Wilder versus AJ Anthony Joshua.
Hey,
I
you might
definitely
be,
want to see that.
hey,
What
you
did you
might be getting
think?
your wish, man. Like, you might be getting your wish. Oh man, that's a great list. Look,
Okay,
absolutely. The only reason I didn't say Tank Davis versus the winner of Haney Loma was because I feel like that fight will get made. Right. So the
okay,
fights that I outlined were things I feel like there's some chance, some sort of obstacle for them to make that fight. Right. It seems to be like they seem to not
yeah,
be able to get over the line with those fights. But I genuinely feel now, especially after what we saw with Davis Garcia and what it was generating and the revenue it generated, I think the promoters
mm,
will be more inclined. Okay, well, Haney wants it, right? If he wins, I'm sure Loma will do it the same, right? And Tank Davis obviously fighting for all the belts, right? I think that'll definitely happen, but that's a blockbuster fight. That's a blockbuster fight, right?
huge.
And your AJ Wilder, ooh, I feel like, I mean, there's a lot of chatter that's happening in December. That'll be belts or no
Yeah,
belts, coming off a loss or a win, or coming from under a rock,
the whole
man. That's
world.
a
Yeah,
fight. That's a
that's
fight, man. Take my money.
yeah.
Take my money, right? You know what I mean? Like, I think if it might even be the one that brings, Anthony Joshua back on gear, and then, back into title
Yeah,
contention. So that'll be an exciting fight. But yeah, I like your list, man. It's a really, really good list.
we need
Um,
to see it. Now, I want to ask you about Tyson Fury. Rumored to be quite close to agreeing maybe to fight Andy the Destroyer
yeah,
Ruiz. Who
yeah,
would you like to see Fury? Well, I know you said Usyk, but
Usyk, yeah. If
is
not
that
Usyk,
realistically his next fight? Like, what do you see happening?
man, I would love to say yes. I would love to say realistically that's going to be his next fight, but it just seems to be like I do not know what's going on. And I know we spoke. Look, like about 10 minutes ago, we spoke about like the monopolization
Mm,
of all this, and in the UFC and having another big organization. The downside of all that is these kind of things. Like obviously,
mm,
we don't get the cross promotional stuff in the UFC, but you get the difficulties in matchmaking. So, well, while I'd love to say Usyk and Fury is still a very high possibility, I think if not the Usyk fight, I mean, look, Ruiz is coming off a win. He was a former title holder, right? He knocked out Joshua, and then he went to a decision. Um, he trains out of the same training camp as Canelo, so we know the quality and caliber of that camp.
yeah,
Yeah, man, I'll be open to seeing that. Like, I still think stylistically, it's quite an easy fight for um, Fury, right? With the
mm,
reach and all of that, the fighting styles. Like, nonetheless, if it's going to be like Fury fighting, I don't know, like a YouTuber, or Fury fighting an actual contender, like I'd go for Andy Ruiz. I mean, Andy Ruiz at one given point, right before the Usyks and everyone emerged, it was Fury, Wilder, Joshua, and Ruiz, right? They were the four horsemen. They were the,
yeah,
the the four headlining that coveted a heavyweight division. So yeah, I'd
yeah,
love to see that fight, right? And then um, hopefully Joshua Wilder takes place in December as well. Yeah, like I
yeah.
mean, this
Saudi Arabia, maybe.
everything's happening in Saudi Arabia at the moment. So
Now,
um,
DJ, I want to ask you also. Francis Ngannou, news just dropped today that
yeah,
negotiations with the One Championship are broken off. So, like for Francis Ngannou fans, I feel for them.
yeah.
What message would you have for them?
Man, it's a tough place, right? Like, as an MMA fan, as a combat sports fan, I want Francis Ngannou to succeed, right? He did something not a lot of people were able to do. He stood up for what he wanted.
Hmm.
Right? He took a stand, right? He left the organization, which is the UFC, as a current UFC champion, and from what we've come to understand, his requests were beyond just himself, and there were the requests for health,
Yep.
uh, insurance, fighter pay, all these kind of things, right? But predominantly,
Yeah.
one of the strict clauses of his contract, he wanted it to be the flexibility for him to be able to go out and box people, etc.
Yeah.
Now, what's a bit concerning at the moment is he's now not tied to the UFC. He's been released from the UFC. He's now able to
Yep.
go and make any um, any uh, fights that he'd want or any organization that he'd like to be part of.
Mm.
Now it's been a while since this has happened, right? Like this whole
Oh
thing,
yeah.
all of this happened in what, January? So it's been a few
Yep.
months, right? It's been a few months since all this happened, and it's a bit concerning that none of them have still come to a understanding or come to an agreement. Now he seems to have
Definitely.
spoken with bare knuckle, and they had, well, according to the president of bare knuckle, he's saying, look, Francis Ngannou's requests were hard to match, right? And then we got one championship, kind of not as much details surface at the moment, but it seems like they've said, look, it's not going ahead, right? And these are big organizations. I don't know if he's had any dialogue with the PFL. I'm not sure. Um, and then obviously the Fury thing was there too. He was calling out Fury. He was calling out Wilder. Well, Wilder said, "Look, I'll fight you. I'd like to fight you. Let's do this." Right? And then nothing came out of that too. So I'm very concerned for Francis Ngannou because while I guess he's a big name, well, you don't want to be in a situation where you've forgotten to a point where your stock plummets, right? And
Yeah.
when
Good point.
because you're only able to secure these big fights as long as you got the name value, right? One of the big things that enticed a lot of these fighters, such as for Tyson Fury, to say, "Me and Francis will be fighting,"
Mm.
is because the not purely because of the matchup, which itself is good. Obviously, you got this scary knockout puncher in Francis Ngannou, and you got the best heavyweight boxer in Tyson Fury. It's not purely because of that. It's mostly because of heavyweight UFC heavyweight champion versus the boxing heavyweight champion or the lineal heavyweight champion, right? So now he doesn't have a title. He's not associated with the UFC, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he left as the heavyweight champion. He was undisputed. No one took that belt away from him. That's still there, but you need to act on this fast when it's still hot, right? I just feel like if look, I have no understanding of how these things work behind the scene, but if I was Francis Ngannou, I'd probably prefer to do a short term deal with someone, get myself a fight that's like a winnable fight, right? Uh, Create some excitement and keep that momentum going, right? Because at the moment, I feel like the Francis Ngannou momentum has come to a halt completely. Well, he's not doing interviews either. There's not many people clamoring to go and like interview him, which is a bit which is disappointing. I think he was on the Helwani show twice, but other than that, we're not seeing
Yeah.
much of what's happening, and also the lack of update. And whoever's responsible for Francis Ngannou's PR, they need to sort of up the game a bit. Maybe give us more insight as to what's going on. Like, where are we at? Like, what sort of negotiations are we talking about? What are the potential fights that we're eyeing, looking at? Right? I mean, to be honest, like my thing is like, what happened to that Wilder fight? Right? It's a big opportunity. Surely they can both make a bag, right? But
Yeah.
how come
Great.
that didn't come into fruition? So
Yeah, great points. Business wise, I think DJ health and Ngannou's health is a thing. I think he really definitely wants to secure a good payday, and
yeah,
he might know that he only has a set few fights left. I think the knee
yeah,
is definitely
yeah,
troubling. I think
yeah,
boxing, I can really just see him not wanting to, take too much damage in terms of combat MMA.
yeah,
I think he would have signed with the UFC otherwise. I think he's definitely looking for that big
yeah,
exhibition boxing
yeah,
fight. You made a great point with Wilder. I
yeah,
think that makes a lot of sense. I think Joshua can make a lot of sense.
yeah.
Just like you said, just get something done. Um,
He gets
just
something.
lock it in.
I understand his reluctance, probably, or reluctance from his side,
Mm,
in terms of not wanting to, um, fight a big name because it could become a matter of one and done, right? Like, imagine like you fight a big name, but they just completely dismantle you, and like it's one-sided domination. That's gonna damage your brand so much that you're not able to, get another boxing bout, right? And then you're
mm,
faced with going back to mixed martial art. And guess what? Like UFC, they've burned the bridges, right? They don't want Francis Ngannou back. And Dana White's been very clear about that. And we know how Dana White is when he makes a
wow.
decision,
Yeah.
he pursues that, right? He's very adamant about it. So obviously he finds himself in a difficult situation. But hey, do you think it was a mistake that he left the UFC?
I think at the time I would say no, but now I'm going to say yes because he's basically like you. The point you made, he's wasted a good, I don't know how long it's been, 6 months now. But
A fair
I
few
think
months, yeah.
now I'm thinking the best thing he could have done, DJ. What are your thoughts on if he just signed a one fight deal with the UFC? Say, hey, I'm gonna, we can't agree on a long term deal. I'm not happy with the bag you're offering, but how
Yeah.
about this? So give me that one big mega fight deal, pay per view money, and I'll fight John Jones, and
Yeah.
then we'll sail off into the sunset, and I'll explore boxing and all that. Maybe what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on doing that?
Yeah, but for me, the confusing part is they've come out openly, and even Francis Ngannou's agreed. It was never about the bag. I think Dana White said he was set to become the highest paid
Mm.
heavyweight ever. Right?
But he
That's the
wanted
way the thing
more, I
into it.
think.
He wanted that flexibility, which the UFC weren't willing to give in terms of boxing,
Okay.
right? I'm
Yep.
not sure about the one and done deal, but yeah, look, that's what it happened. That's what probably happened, and then he stepped away. But I do believe, and here's what's something else that's impacting him, right? He hasn't fought for a very long time. We're talking about him being released from the UFC at the start of this year. Okay, that's not too far away. That was not too
Mm.
far back. But let's not forget, he hasn't fought since when was the last time he fought? Like, I think
He
it was
beat
in
Stipe,
2000.
wasn't
No,
it?
no, he beat Cyril Gahn, remember?
Okay. Yep. That's
So it
right.
was in 2021 he fought last, I believe.
Yep.
So 2021 January, and then since then he hasn't fought. Right? I could be
Wow.
wrong. Let me make sure that I don't want to.
Definitely makes sense because I don't think he would have gone backwards after Stipe.
Sorry.
He
Yeah,
was
no,
gone.
I stand corrected. So he's fought 23rd January 2022. Right? So
Yep.
like at the start of last year. So at this
Mm.
point, we haven't seen him in action for 15 months, and that's gonna take a toll because people have forgotten your skill set, your performances. Within that cage. Obviously, he's had some highlight real knockouts, and that's not gonna go. It's gonna stay, but we see this MMA fandom is very recency bias. They want to see what's new, like whatever's new that sticks in their mind, right? Um,
Mm.
so um, look, hopefully it locks something in. I look in my opinion, I don't think he made a mistake leaving the UFC. I think he stood up for what he felt was right. I always respect that, and I think in making that decision, I'm still backing him to that for that, and I
Okay.
think he made the right decision. But
Yeah.
where I feel they went wrong is what happened after he left the UFC. He
Yeah.
let the steam go down. Like I feel like that's where the mistake happened, right? Like I feel like there should have been a little bit more urgency to say, okay, well, this is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do, and lock something in. Something,
Yeah. Maybe
right?
there was an injury setback we never heard about
Yeah,
because you made that great point. I think it's very common a fighter will, let's say, break negotiations, and then shortly after you hear them and make a big announcement. They've got, such and such huge bout versus this guy. But
yeah,
like you said, that's been ages ago, and we haven't heard nothing. So maybe there was some kind of setback. Because, like
could
you said,
be.
how
Yep.
hard is it to negotiate a deal with Wilder, or were they both A B side, whatever? It's been what, 15 months now, like you said, where
Yeah,
surely he could have found the bag somewhere.
yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, from what he said, he doesn't have a manager representing him. He's doing it himself, right? So and that makes it a little bit more challenging too, right? Like, I
Yeah,
mean, I understand you want to do it. We know some of the UFC fighters who do it too. We got like the likes of Sean O'Malley, Paulo Costa, his partner does it for him. Yes, it is, but when you're completely leaving an organization and going into an entirely new
yeah,
combat aspect of it in boxing, and I feel like maybe getting some advice, getting some help in terms of negotiations maybe could help as well. Like I just think that's quite important.
yeah.
So
Because
man,
yeah, the days are ticking on a career. It's not
yeah,
forever. Like you said,
yeah, and,
you look back on your career, it's like, man, 15 months of being inactive has
yeah,
just gone by. And another thing I'm getting frustrated with was back to Conor again. It seems like we're seeing him in the WWE ring, on the
yeah,
news, his mug shot more than we're actually seeing him fighting. It's
yeah.
it's becoming absolutely frustrating. the moment.
Yeah, I
Right now,
know.
the
Like,
man's just a personality. He's not even a fighter anymore.
yeah. Yeah, look, I understand
You
with
know?
McGregor, obviously, like he's really wealthy now. He's made it, so he kind of can sit back and sort of pick and choose what he'd like to do. But I feel like, yeah, with Francis Ngannou, like it was this big storyline. It was this big example set to all the other fighters as well. Like, stand up for what is right. But I hope, like, for his sake and everyone else's sake, it doesn't, like, the outcome's failure, because that sends
Yeah.
an even more gloomier message to the rest of the fighting community. Like, okay, well, you got to stay put. You know what I mean? Like,
Hey,
man, he's got every single potential to go and secure a big fight and, like, get his name out there and fight. I reckon. I mean, let's be honest, right? If someone tells you Ngannou's fighting this weekend, you'll still watch it, right?
yeah,
That's it.
100%.
So he's just gotta cash in on that. You know what I mean?
Just to wrap things up, I want this question to throw at you. We talked about, some fantasy fights that we might want to see, right? We saw the retirement of Jorge Gamebred Masvidal, right?
Yeah.
Him and Conor were never able to match up. Now, imagine if we saw them. What are your thoughts on seeing them in a bare knuckle
Oh
um, affair?
man,
That
bare
would
knuckle.
those two big names bare knuckle. That would
Why not boxing though? Like, if it's bare knuckle, we may as well do boxing, because Game Bread FC is doing boxing. Remember last time, Anthony Pettis and Roy Jones Jr.,
yeah
Aldo Stevens. So yeah, like, I think, yeah, like boxing, yeah, that would be great. But I think the thing that's hard to forget and ignore is that Conor McGregor is still attached to the UFC. He's still under contract with the UFC,
hmm,
right? So unless he retires and then goes and pursues all these things, which I hope he doesn't, like.
hmm.
I mean, but having said that, I don't know. Like, you gotta have that mindset to be able to, you know.
I
Uh,
think there's something to do with USADA because remember he tweeted that out and it was F USADA and never again and all this kind of thing, and now we're seeing him stall. So I think there could be something to do with that. But any closing thoughts as we wrap up this first weekly combat sports roundup?
Um, Nothing at all. I think BKFC delivered, right? They sort of put the MMA fans on notice. They say, "Oh, hey, we can deliver some fights too." McGregor was out there. His name garners a lot of attention, and I think him facing off with Mike Perry, that was exciting. Solid event, or a solid main event at the UFC Apex. Song Yadong proves that he's still among the elite bantamweights. A lot of uncertainty in that heavyweight division, a lot of rumors, a lot of, rumored matchups, still no
Hmm.
definite announcements on any of those. We got the Loma Haney fight, which is in May this month. A big month for boxing, let's not forget that. Loma Haney on the 20th of May, Canelo Ryder on the 6th of May. So, you got some big names coming up, so that's
Cejudo,
exciting. Cejudo's fighting in the UFC 288, which
yep,
we'll do a preview for. But man, like, yeah, look, a good weekend. It's good to see some of these other organizations flourishing.
yeah, no doubt. And of course, it leads us closer to International Fight Week. The buzz is going to be at next level.
Hey,
DJ here with
it's gonna
CT to
be a
cover it.
it's gonna be a big card, huh? Like, we got some Aussies
Yep,
fighting there. We got Volkanovski in the main event. We got Robert Whittaker taking on Dricius Duplessis, which seems to be a title eliminator. Yeah, a lot of things going on. Like,
yep,
but yeah, good time to be a fan, man. Like, good time to be a fan.
absolutely right. Good time. And for that's a tap. This one's a wrap.
It is a wrap indeed.
Yeah.
Catch you in the
Like,
next one.
subscribe. Yep, leave us some comments. What you want to see us talk about. What you want to get our thoughts on. And I appreciate everyone for listening again. We out.